Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of CloudTalent360.com. My name is Jay Sen, and I'm here with
Martin Gessner.
And we are the co-founders of CloudTalent360.com. And our goal really, and our mission is to help Salesforce people and other CRM talent to have the best careers possible, to really understand all the steps in their career and manage their career path, maximizing the value that they can provide to their organization, to their future career journey as well. And today what we're going to do and what we're doing is having a series with Salesforce leaders around the world, people who have created value in the Salesforce ecosystem, learn about their journey, learn about their organization, and get their best advice for people who want to have great Salesforce careers and have really satisfying careers as well. So before we start, I'll just have Martin say hi and introduce himself so that you know who the hosts are, and then I'll get into part one of the interview where we'll talk with our guest today, Jayant Umrani, the founder of Bolt Today out of Atlanta, Georgia, who runs one of the top Salesforce consulting organizations. And we'll talk to him about his journey, his organization, and his tips. So before we do that, Martin, please say hi.
So hi everyone, I'm Martin Gessner. I'm co-founder of Cloud Talent 360 and also the founder of FocusOnForce.com. You may know us as a place to go for helping with training and preparation for Salesforce certifications.
Thank you, Martin. So today I'm really excited. Our guest is Jayant Umrani. And
hello.
Hi, Jayant. Before we go too far, I really want to go back to your journey as a person in an entrepreneurship role. And I want to go back to the very beginning, the early part of that. Maybe you're in high school, maybe you're in university, and ask you, what was the first spark, the first thing you did as a student or early in your career that gave you that real feeling that entrepreneurship is something you might enjoy? It could be something very small, like a paper route, or you did something like an internship that gave you that spark. What was the first earliest thing you did that was entrepreneurship related?
Oh, sure. So, hi everyone. My name is Jayant. I'm the founder of Bolt, as Jay said. And to answer your question, I think the first ever thing I did, and I don't know, I've not mentioned this to many so far in my career, but the first ever thing I did is I used to play badminton a lot, right? I used to play little, at a executive level of badminton matches. And the first thing I did as an entrepreneur or as a I didn't know that word that time, but as a business myself is I used to really re-gut the rackets of badminton, right? Because that is little bit of a skill that many people want their racket guts to be at a certain strength, so that when you're playing badminton, it depends upon your style, whether you want more control over the shuttle, do you want more power in the racket. Based on that, you actually gut the racket. And since I myself was a good player, I understood that, and that is something I used to do. And I used to do half of the price of what a shop will do for them, right? Plus, I used to give them 2 repairs free, right? Because who will believe me otherwise to do that? But I believe that was way back, I think when I was early high school, 8th grade, when I really started doing that. And I think that is the time I really thought that I enjoyed doing it, right? And later part in my career, I really realized that if you enjoy what you do, you're always good at it.
Yeah, I think that that story, Jayant. Thank you for sharing that with our viewers and our audience. And as I said, we're really looking at what is the journey of Salesforce leaders in the community, and I love that story because what you can tell is that there's a spark in there to do something well and share it with others. And so first step is you realize that you've gone through the steps of really paying attention to what makes a good racket in badminton, and you found the difference makers, right? And then you took your skill and your knowledge and you said, I can help other top badminton players. And you're doing this really as a student in 8th grade way back then. And so you can feel that journey a little bit, because when we talk about in the next part now, Martin and Jayant will talk about his organization, what he's built from those early days as a student, how he's progressed now to have this worldwide organization in the Salesforce community. You'll see that sparks from back then how they've translated into his organization. So, it's really an interesting thing to connect your childhood and your early experience of providing value into your current role and how your values have even stayed consistent with that. So that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And it really helps people to get to know you as a leader, and see you as a person before we talk about your advice and your business. So I think it's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. So we'll be back in part 2 in just a moment, where Martin will talk about Bolt Today, which is Jayant's current entrepreneurship enterprise. And you'll see where Jayant has come and what he's doing now to bring value to the Salesforce community and the ecosystem. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. This is CloudTalent360.com. I'm here with Martin Gessner and Jayant Umrani out of Atlanta, Georgia, the founder of Bolt.today. And in this part of the interview, we're going to talk about Bolt.today, the series about Salesforce leaders. And Martin will talk with Jayant about what is Bolt.today and how does it differentiate itself to businesses and to people around the world that are interested in getting the most value out of their Salesforce program.
So, Jayant, thanks for sharing that story in part 1. I also found it really interesting, and one of the things that stood out to me was the customer service aspect of what you described and providing that superior service to people. And I'm curious how that may have be part of your thought process now. Now you've built Bolt Today as a Salesforce partner, implementation partner, and ISV. And really curious to just understand a little bit more about Bolt Today. What sort of companies do you serve? What sort of value do you provide? And how would you describe it to others who maybe don't know of Bolt Today yet?
Absolutely, and thank you for this opportunity. So before I talk about Bolt Today, I just want to take a small step back and really talk about why I started and what made me start this company. So before starting Bolt.today, I used to work for a global consulting organization, a $5 billion organization, and I worked for them for almost 12 years, right? So I was doing pretty good. I joined them when it was 230 million, and it went to 5 billion, right? So that gave me wide amount of experience. At the same time, it could have been a company where I could have retired. But what happened is that company went through a journey of from private to public, and they acquired another big company in the enterprise space, and that company had a very small one customer in Salesforce, right? So the management, the CEO came to me and said that we want some leader who can really take up this challenge as a technologist and build this practice. And that was my first time I ever entered into Salesforce ecosystem, and that was back in 2008. Right, Salesforce was not as big as it is today during those times, but and over a period of 6-7 years with them, I really implemented Salesforce in a lot of big and small organizations. Right, typically large telcos to large manufacturing organizations where these customers were. Right, and what I realized, one common factor I realized, and that is really the founding principle of my company. Right. So what I realized is, as Salesforce is a great platform, and it has grown significantly, and the company, we love the company as well a lot. But at the bottom line, if you really look at, there are 2 or 3 aspects of Salesforce which are not that great, right? And one and most important aspect is the users of Salesforce, right, don't really love Salesforce, using it day to day, right? They find it clunky. They find it takes. I'll talk about salespeople for a minute, right? Salespeople really find that it takes me 3 hours of a week to update Salesforce, but it doesn't give me anything back. So why am I doing this? I'm just doing it to keep my boss off my back, right? You go to service people, they say, oh, we are doing all of this ticket management, but it's not really telling me how can I better serve my customers, right? And if you ask the CFO, he really feels that we are spending millions of dollars on Salesforce. We have implemented this system. It is a great tool, but is it really giving me the ROI, right, for the dollars I'm spending? And that became a real core founding principle for Bolt, saying that how can I improve the return on investment for a company who is using Salesforce, And that is where we really got started as Bolt today. And that has been our principle of where we got started. Now, if you really look at that problem little one step in detail, you will really see that if you want to increase the ROI on Salesforce, there are 2 or 3 things that really need to fall in place, right? One and most important thing is that your user adoption needs to improve, because that's something that Salesforce has always struggled upon, right? So how do we really improve the user adoption? Second aspect, if you really look at, your data quality has to be good, right? Because there has been previously a lot of problem. People have improved a lot over the last 6-7 years I have seen, but there has been inherent problem that Salesforce people don't trust data in Salesforce. It is not a system of record, right? It's a record keeping system. So how do we change that? That was the second important aspect onto it. If you really look at any organization or any Salesforce installation, you will see that there will be 4 or 5 packages installed, products installed, and there will be some level of customization done, right? So if you're going to go and say an organization that I need to do a rip and replace type of transformation, nobody has time and money to do it, right? Everybody is a fast running train, right? And that is where we came up with a concept saying that, can I really build bolt-on solutions, right, which can go on top of your existing implementation and solve your key pain areas, right?
Okay, so I think fundamentally the critical thing is really giving people a very simple way to share and refer Bolt.today today. So I think the key thing in this is you have so much experience, Jayant, that you really see the detail of it. You see the whole picture, and when people want to refer your organization, they need to be able to summarize it in just a couple of sentences. So the 2 sentences I would say are, number one, Bolt.today is all about translating the effort of all your Salesforce users into a high-level ROI view for the whole organization and the CFO in particular. Understand ROI, to the CFO, and also ROI for the user's effort. That's the most critical short description of how to refer Bolt.today. Do you feel that's okay?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I love that.
You love that, right?
You articulated it better than I could.
So that's really an important point of this leadership series, is even helping organizations that have so much value to summarize their value in just 1 or 2 sentences, so that wherever people hear about Bolt.today, they will remember those 2 sentences, and then your organization will have even sharper focus on the value you're providing. And then the second thing that you said is that behind that sentence, there's a lot of depth. So when you say something like Bolt.today is going to translate every user and connect them into your organization to really show your CFO the ROI by giving the user a reason to do their Salesforce effort, giving them an ROI on their effort. That's really the core mission of Bolt.today. But then behind that, there's a lot of depth, and you have these add-ons and you have other processes to really dig into why it's not happening. Why is this ROI not being realized?
Weak today.
Right. And every single day, and that's the today part, is that you're really a real-time kind of organization. You're really looking at the real-time flow of information and giving people that view.
I think what would be interesting is what you've described are common challenges: the user adoption, data quality, ROI. Can you give do any examples come to mind of what you may have done differently to other partners, or because you have that focus, that projects were successful or you did get an ROI?
Oh yes, so I'll give you a longer answer than a shorter one version of it, because what I have realized is there are 2 types of vendors in the market today in case of Salesforce, right? One are called consulting partners, right? Others are called product ISVs, right? And if you really look at how they approach the problem of a customer, business problem of a customer is, the product person will say, take my product with minimum configuration customizations, it will solve your problem, right? And you're laughing already, right? I'm going to talk the second part, right? When you go to services companies alone, they will go and say that I have done this in the past, I have the right skills, tell me what to do and I'll do it for you, right? So they typically throw warm bodies at you, right? And that is where the fundamental problem has been of why people are not able to solve this problem and why the ROI is weak right now, right? So the approach we take is really truly a solution approach, right? Where we don't care about whether a product or a service is going to solve a business problem, but we look at a business problem and how the business problem can be solved, and can we really have a reverse traceability, right, to that business success metrics, as we call it, right? So our first approach, whenever we get in any engagement, early engagement, late engagement, whichever is the situation, we spend a day or two, and not more than that, a day or two talking to the stakeholders, right? And documenting their business success metrics, right? Ask a CFO what does ROI on Salesforce mean is very different than ask a sales guy what a ROI on Salesforce mean versus you go and ask a service department, right? And that will give you a favor of what does business success metrics is, right? And moment you have a view of that business success metrics, again, in 2 to 3 days, we are not talking about doing a consulting engagement of 3 months and 6 months, right? Like the big fives do. We are talking about very tactical things. Go talk to them, understand that, right? And after that, when they are looking at, when we are trying to solve their problem, right? It is not then about data quality, right? It is not really then about user adoption. It is all about the business data flow, right? If you can make that business data flow accurate to deliver your business success metrics, you have a real ROI on Salesforce, right?
One last question on this part before we go to part 3, which is your career management, advice and insights. Is really quickly just the size of your organization and the types of customers you work with. How many people do you have working in your organization, and how many customers do you work with, and what's their revenue range?
So we are right now close to 50 people team, and we are distributed between US, few people in the UK, London especially, and a big team back in India. That is how we are distributed. We are close to $6 million revenues in next 4 years time. Right now, this is the 5th year going. And the type of customers we work with are typically the customers who are anywhere between 500 million, to a 10 billion type of range.
And are you focusing on any specific industries? Do you have like mostly, for example, in healthcare, or do you have an industry in hospitality, or would you say are your top 2 or 3 industries?
Yeah, so 3 industries we focus upon, right? One is the telco. I come from a telecom background. So one is the telco industry that we focus upon, and we have built a couple of solutions into that space. Second is the financial technologies, or fintech as we call them. Those are the companies I focus upon. And third is the healthcare companies that we have. And all my customers, except 1 or 2 are from these 3 verticals, right? So, and healthcare is the vertical I really got into because I do a non-profit organization called CloudMD Foundation, which provides healthcare to less fortunate people in Nepal, Bangladesh, and India, right? So healthcare was always close to me, and that initiative is funded by Salesforce Foundation, and the EMR is built on Salesforce, right? So that was my entry into healthcare region, and that's, I think, the area why we are into healthcare today.
Thank you, Jayant. In this part of the session, we're going to have Martin and Jayant talk about career paths for Salesforce, career path management. So I'll hand it over to Martin.
So, Jayant, you've built up a team of consultants. It'd be really interesting to hear your advice on what makes a good consultant, and what are the career paths for people. So if they're maybe they're working at an end user at the moment, or they've heard about the consulting career path, they find it interesting, but they'd like to know more about it, and if they might be the right type of person for that career path. And what does that actually look like, and what advice would you give people who are interested in that?
Okay. And so what I did is I really studied myself about Salesforce, and I did that after 1 year of starting the company, right? And this might help a lot of people who wants to just build a good career in Salesforce. That what I learned is, unless you really have good, thorough understanding of the platform, it is very difficult to help others, right? That is number 1 advice I'll give. So jump into Salesforce, do certifications with your hard work, right? And certification is not going to make you expert. Let me be honest about it. But it will definitely tell you or it will touch with all the aspects of Salesforce, right? And that is very important. You should know what's possible, what's not possible, right? What are the best practices Salesforce recommends and how you can really talk about, right? So that's the first part. The second part is there are a lot of paths as you go to build a Salesforce career, right? And one should choose based on his core capability, right? To give you an example, if you're a hardcore technical person, then becoming a certified technical architect might be a good path for you, right? And it starts by simply getting your or becoming a developer into Salesforce space and climbing that ladder, right? Second path might be you have a lot of business experience and you want to become a consultant on Salesforce, right? A business consultant on Salesforce, right? Where you can talk to the stakeholders, understand their problem, and actually go and guide the team saying that what is the best way in Salesforce to do that problem, right? That is where the consulting certifications of Salesforce really come in, right? Sales Cloud Consultant and Service Cloud Consultants and those. You can build a career into that, right? Third aspect is you want to become a business analyst type of a person on Salesforce, right? That is a type of a career people undermine, but it's very important because understanding a business problem and translating into a technical requirements, right? There is always a gap because if you give business problem to the to development team, they are going to code the best way they have always coded, right? So they are not going to really look at whether configuration should be 80% versus development 20%. They're not going to follow that rule, right? They will always go custom object. They will always go for a custom solution, right? So that is the third career path, I will say. But over and above that, I think one thing I will always stress is that you should really have a passion to solve the business user's problem. And if you have that passion into yourself, whether you choose a technical path, a consultant path, or a business analyst path, I think you will become successful, right? To choose wisely, but first evaluate yourself whether you really have that passion, right, to solve a business problem. And if so, jump into this career because it is an ocean. It's no more a small capability, as you know. So
I think that's really interesting how you are describing that you really need the passion for solving the business problem. And that's really the heart of being a consultant, to understand the problem, to have the passion, to really be curious, I think, and to act as a trusted advisor. But based on your experience, what sort of people, as well as those qualities, what other qualities do you think make a really good consultant?
So I think the other 2 or 3 qualities I will say that really makes a good consultant is definitely a person who keeps him up to date of what is going on in the business community, right? Salesforce is releasing a lot of new stuff, but if you really go and talk to some of the technical people or Salesforce people who have been there 5-6 years, some of them are not even aware about what new thing is happening, right? So if you really want to be a good consultant and want to grow into this career, keep up to date of what's happening, right? Number one, right? Second important aspect of Salesforce technologies is that it has grown too much widely, right? And so it's very important to understand where are the boundaries, right? What is the boundary of Sales Cloud? When do we really enter Service Cloud, right? Many people really don't know that because the case object is even available on Sales Cloud, as you know, right? So it becomes very confusing to people that what are the boundaries, where really Service Cloud starts versus Sales Cloud starts. So if you want to become a consultant into this space, understanding these boundaries of Salesforce products is very important because they are really done with a lot of thought behind it, right? Whichever product Salesforce releases, I think there is a lot of architectural thought that goes behind it, right? Third and most important aspect I will tell you is understanding the data model of Salesforce, right? Because Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, yes, it is little simpler, a data model to understand, right? But when you go into Health Cloud, right, there are 6 data models in Health Cloud. When you go to Commerce Cloud, there are a lot others. When you go to communities, you know how complex is communities, right? So another important advice is if you want to become a good consultant, have a good understanding of data models, print those data models and keep them for your reference. Because the solution that you develop if that is extending the existing data model, it is always a right solution. But if it is replacing the existing standard objects of Salesforce by mistake or intentional, right, you are really going on a wrong path, right? So that would be my third aspect of it, that if you really want to become a good consultant, understand, I think, the anatomy of Salesforce, if I may.
So I think that was a really interesting point that you made about the data model, and we haven't heard people bring that up before. One example that comes to my mind is being compliant with data regulations. And for example, GDPR, Salesforce has been building out objects around consent and privacy preferences. And your point about using standard versus custom objects, if you don't have a good understanding of what the actual standard data model is, you may go down a wrong path or wrong track. So that was a really interesting point. Can you think of any other? So you've talked about having a really good overall understanding of Salesforce functionality, of the data model, being passionate, being curious to solve problems. What about other soft skills? Because being a consultant, it's really important that you're able to facilitate meetings. Some of the things that come to mind are conflict, being able to resolve conflicts and negotiation, and just general communication skills. Do you have any? What else comes to your mind, or what advice would you give people? In addition to the technical side of things and the functional understanding.
Okay, so I think that's a very important point, because I always assume that soft skills is given if you want to become a consultant, right? But many times it is, it is not given the enough importance that it is required. Because if you are not effectively able to communicate, then there is a problem, right? And the best way I have seen is that, and there are always conflicting opinions about people, because Salesforce is such a platform that technically, if you ask me to do something, I can do it. Is it a right way to do it or not is always debatable, right? And that is where I have seen in some of the business meetings, things start heating up, especially when the opinion starts clashing, right? Especially of the experienced people. And if you are going to be in that bench, I'll only tell you one thing, that always step back and look at what is the core business success metrics that we are trying to achieve, right? And to achieve that business success metrics, right, can we really do that with minimum customization and maximum out of box? Because if the answer to this question is yes, then it is very easy to choose between two. So get objective in choosing a right solution approach, rather than saying what is right and what is wrong to do in Salesforce. Because that is one. Second is, a lot of people argue about the best practices in Salesforce. Okay, I've seen that argument even with some of the Salesforce technical architects, who have 8, 9, 10 years of experience also do that, right? And one advice again I will give you in that space is the best practices that Salesforce has released are really thought through. So you should really carefully look at saying that when you are recommending any best practice, also take into consideration the context of what we are talking about. Right. For example, I'll give you, few days back, I was in a conversation where we were talking about some of the best practices, but a best practice for creating a managed package is very different from a best practice if you want to create a custom solution, right? And we were talking about a very simple thing of custom settings versus custom metadata, right? And the debate about that, right? It is there out there. But if you get into such scenarios, you should always really look at again that what is the intent, what are we trying to build, what problem it is solving, right? And the approaches that are being spoken about, are those approaches falling into the practice of how much customization we are talking about versus configuration we are talking about, and whether this relates to a custom solution we are saying one customer will use, or we are talking about a managed package or a product which many customers might use, right? So that is where I will talk about how you can resolve conflicts. But I cannot stress enough on saying that understanding every stakeholder's business success metrics is very important, because what I think Salesforce can do for me is very different from a person sitting across the table thinks it can do for you. And both the things are possible. So you cannot say Salesforce cannot do one thing. So that would be, I think, how I would like to summarize that.
So just to summarize some of the key insights from Jayant in this part of the interview series with Salesforce leaders, the first thing that Jayant really said is that it's important to build your foundation. Really dig in and understand Salesforce, and he gave some advice, on understanding the data objects, really understanding the data models as well, and really getting in and really looking at those. The second thing that Jayant talked about, and I thought was very helpful, was really balancing, where you're doing your customizations. So specifically, Jayant's suggestion is don't be very careful about replacing something that's a core data model or a standard data model, because you're kind of introducing something that might work short term but would create more problems in the future. And the other piece of advice that Jayant has given is that it's very important to stay in touch with new developments in Salesforce, because if you want to be, at the top of your field, there's a lot of, really every quarter and every month. This is also where, Martin's organization Focus on Force can be a real help for people. So find a few trusted resources where you can brush up on your skills, so that you're not giving the customer outdated advice, And then the final thing that Jayant was saying was that let's look at specifically in the end, the customer stakeholders success criteria and success metrics, because ultimately everything you're doing should tie back to that, and you shouldn't get down the path of over customizing something without looking at the value, the long-term value, and I think hinted a little bit about maintenance costs, because some solutions are going to have lower maintenance costs. And one of the underlying themes, I think, and to wrap up, the interview today, summarize the whole interview in a moment, but one of the critical things that I think that we're learning from Jayant today is the concept of the why behind what you do, not just the what you do, but the why behind it, and really connecting your stakeholders to that. Number one, by listening to them and getting their definitions of ROI. And then secondly, understanding the why of Salesforce. Why was Salesforce developed this way? So that if you understand the intention of the Salesforce, different modules, different systems, then you're going to have those two whys guiding you, the different ROI metrics and success metrics why, and the Salesforce why, the Salesforce reasons behind their system design. Then you take that and you connect that back to the what you do as a consulting organization or as a person. That set of skills, as Martin was saying, the soft skill and the technical skill, organizing the why and the what together will give you a way to connect with your customer and help to create the most value in the shortest amount of time. So Jayant, thank you so much, for being with us today, sharing your experience, starting with your very first story where you were working on those badminton rackets and giving players who love badminton the edge, giving them the edge to really perform a little bit better. And you were doing that in 8th grade, way back then, to your history of working in a big firm and realizing that, in a sense that as a third party, you can even be more objective and help lots of organizations, to now where Bolt today has become a 50-person organization, and you're helping to create value for the Salesforce ecosystem, and really help people to enjoy using Salesforce, getting the ROI on their time, and translating that ROI on their time to the ROI for the CFO and for the different business unit leaders. So we really appreciate having you on our series as Salesforce Leaders series. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me. This was a very good discussion to have with you, Jay and Martin. Thank you so much.
Thanks, John. Really interesting.
That's it for this episode of CloudTalent360.com. Make sure you subscribe and check the notes below. We'll have links to Bolt today, of course, and the key insights that you learned will be summarized in the notes below. And we'll see you next time on the leadership series at CloudTalent360.com, your source for managing your career path to maximize your steps, have a meaningful Salesforce career, and to also provide value and have the highest earning potential you can. Talk to you soon.